Let's go to the Progressive Insurance guest line right now. Joining us, national features writer for Rivals.com, part of the Yahoo Sports family. Adam Krohn's on the line.
Today must be like the day after Christmas, fam.
Adam, welcome to the Diehards on YSR. Good morning, buddy.
Hey, what's up, Anthony Mark? How you guys doing?
We're doing all right, man. Was yesterday a pretty exciting day for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the day after Thanksgiving, for a retail person. It's so busy and all over the place. And there was a lot of excitement, a lot of new drama that we're not used to. That was a lot of fun to cover. And, yeah, it was a great day.
When you look at teams and successive teams, three of four playoff teams that were just in the playoffs have at least 40 players ranked in the top 300. The last 9 champs signed a top 10 class heading into a championship season. Bama, it looks like they had the number 1 recruiting class. Talk a little bit about recruiting rankings and the importance of them.
Well, yeah, I wrote a story about this a couple weeks ago, but basically when you look at the Rivals.com team recruiting rankings over the last 4 classes and you add them up, the top 3 schools on that list are Alabama, Ohio State, and Florida State, and those were 3 of the teams in this year's college football playoff. And, of course, there's going to be hits and misses. Florida was actually number 4 on that list, and Oregon was all the way up at number 16, and then there was like Baylor, TCU, and Mississippi State. They were all in the 30s. But overall, if your team had a highly ranked class this season, there's definitely reason to be optimistic that that's going to translate on the field.
Do you think yesterday was probably the last day for the fax machines for coaches around the country?
I hope so. I mean, it's, completely outdated and kind of silly. And, there's got to be that's not going to be something I would think would be too hard to implement at all. So, yeah, I think, they're already starting to do some new things with recruiting. They're talking about moving up the early signing period in December. They're doing things for early enrollees. They can sign a financial aid package in August. So, they're taking recruiting factors into consideration. I think this is one factor they'll definitely consider as well.
Yeah, you talked about the changes in the financial aid rules. How is that going to affect some teams that really can't afford that? I mean, some schools are going to be paying for summer school, other schools aren't. Can't that be contrived as a recruiting advantage?
I don't necessarily see it that way. I think mainly it's just for kids that, need to get acclimated with financial aid. They can go ahead and start doing that, during their final semester in high school instead of having to wait all the way up until they have to start going in January. It's just one more thing that they can get out of the way, and it allows them to have unlimited contact with the coaches when they sign an aid agreement, so they can build better relationships with the coaching staff. Like with quarterbacks, they're common. It's very common for them to try to be an early enrollee and get there and start learning the system, start getting on a weight program, and just the earlier the better, pretty much for those kids. So I think it's a good rule as far as that goes.
The early signing period is going to be a big change for college football coaches. How do you think that's going to affect the recruiting schedule and maybe even scheduling off games in off weeks in December?
Yeah, and that's the part that's going to be fun and interesting to see how that plays out. But basically, next year recruits can avoid a lot of this post-dead period in February National Signing Day hype by signing in December, and it's just another option on top of that. Like that financial aid for early enrollees, and it could help reduce the number of decommitments, which were extraordinarily high this year. The early signing period would be the 3rd Wednesday of December, so the player still gets a chance to take his official visits during the season. But the thing is, you have to make sure that's where you want to go to school, because if you sign there, you can't decommit and re-sign in February. So you're actually contractually bound to the school. So if there's a coaching change after the season, you're out of luck. But the rule's mainly for kids who know where they want to go to school. And you look at some of the top recruits from this year's class, like Derwin James, Kevin Tolliver, DeAndre Johnson. They've all been committed to their school for years, and this is probably something they would have taken advantage of. I know Derwin and DeAndre grew up Florida State fans, and they were committed while E.J. Manuel was still the quarterback. So that's why some people think December isn't early enough, and August might even be a better time.
We're chatting with Adam Krohn, national features writer for Rivals.com, here on the Diehards on Yahoo Sports Radio. Adam, it always amazes me, and the number one player in the country, Byron Cowart, goes to Auburn. It always amazes me with these kids, and people talk about, even like a Johnny Football type at 20, 21 years old, 22 years old, how mature these kids for the most part are, being number one recruit in the country. We remember when we were that age, and heck, I'm 42 years old, and I still can't get out of my own way. Talk a little bit about the maturity of Byron Cowart and all the pressure that goes along with being a number one pick, number one recruit, if you will, in the country.
Yeah, and I thought he handled this process extremely well. I've spoken to him at length several times during his recruitment for feature stories. He's very thoughtful, mature for his age, well-spoken. As far as a player, I think Auburn's getting he's very mature from a mental and physical standpoint. He's 6'3", 252 pounds, so he's already built like an NFL linebacker right now. So he's got a very high ceiling as far as adding, to his frame. And then, from a maturity standpoint, he already has a plan for his life after football. He wants to go into sports broadcasting. And just by doing interviews with him, I think that's something that he could excel at. He seems to have a lot going for him. I think he'll do well at Auburn. And just as far as his recruiting process, I thought it was a fitting end there, he committed very early yesterday on national TV. And then it took him 7 hours to send his letter of intent. And people started, wondering what was going on with that. Like, was he sure about his decision and this and that? And, basically the way his whole process played out, it was just all over the map. There was a lot of different favorites from Florida to Oregon to Alabama. And then right there at the end came Auburn and landed the best player in the country. And, he had that one last dramatic twist up the sleeve, but, at the end of the day, he announced Auburn as his school, and he eventually faxed his letter of intent. So all's well that ends well.
Will Muschamp leaving Florida to go to Auburn, I wonder what kind of a factor he was for there. Must have put a smile on his face stealing a kid out of Florida.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw the reaction video of the war room when Auburn found out. The coaching staff was going crazy, and Will Muschamp was just kind of sitting there, like, subdued almost. I wonder, he's got to feel good about that, and it probably, upsets the Florida fan base even more that, had some really pretty bad seasons for them, for the Gators, and then after he gets fired, he comes and takes, the best player in the country, who many thought for the longest time Byron Cowart was going to go to Florida. So, yeah, that was another interesting twist to that story.
You had coaches at Penn State, Ohio State, all talking about how important it is to keep kids in state. How is the state of Florida divided up?
Well, obviously Florida State. The big three: Florida State, Miami, and Florida, and they're just they all have pretty strong recruiting classes this year, especially Florida State and Florida.
Talking to Adam Krohn, national features writer for Rivals.com here on YSR. Staying on that theme, Ohio State for our great affiliate WCLT in Columbus, Ohio, 1430 the ticket. 27 recruits, 12 in-state from the state of Ohio. Highest rated class in the Big Ten are the Buckeyes. They did 5 big guys on the offensive line, 5 defensive linemen. Can you talk a little bit about our kids, the trends? Are kids staying closer to home and staying in-state nowadays?
Don't really know specifically about the trends as far as staying in state versus out of state. One trend that I know I've been focusing on is you hear kids they want to commit to the coach and not the school. And I talked to a lot of kids about that. And I wrote a story about it a couple of weeks ago that there's a strong likelihood that that a coach that a prospect commits to won't be there by the time he graduates. And, the story that I'm talking about, you just looked at the numbers of the research that I did. The average head coaching tenure for the Power 5 schools is only 5.38 years. And so the odds of a class of 2016 commit finishing 4 college seasons with the coach he committed to is only 33%. And so basically, players need to have that in mind, whether it's in-state or out-of-state, that they're probably going to end up playing for a different coach. And these are kids that are trying to get to the league, and a big factor in their decision is choosing a coach they believe that it's going to help them get there. Look at Roquan Smith, for example. Yesterday, he committed to UCLA, and almost immediately after he committed, he learned that his lead recruiter and assistant coach for the Bruins, Jeff Ulbrich, may be joining the Atlanta Falcons staff. So, kind of like Byron Cowart, he announced, and then, he never faxed his letter of intent, and he still hasn't faxed it. And he's looking at his options, even though he already made his commitment. And he never sent the letter of intent. And now, UGA, a few other schools are back in the mix. So choosing a school can can be really difficult, whether it's out of state, in state. Whether you like the school or the coach, it's something that you have to. It's a hard decision to make.
Would you be in favor of letting kids out of their commitment if there was a coaching change before the season started?
Well, I mean, if you're going to start doing that, I'm not sure what the point of an early signing period would be. Doesn't seem like that would be in the spirit of the rule. But when I was talking to the committee that's putting this early signing period proposal together, they are very aware that that's a situation, and for right now, they're just going to try to get the rule passed as is. Meaning, if they do sign and the coach is fired, they're going to be stuck with the school. But again, that's for that rule is for the kid that wants to go to the school no matter what.
Adam, something I didn't quite I never understood was why don't these teams wait till the end of the day to announce all their recruits? Because if I'm a player at a certain position and I see that a player went there, maybe I would decide, if I'm undecided, to go to another school. Why wouldn't you just wait, if you're that school, to make the decision of the announcement of all these players? So maybe you get depth and you get all these players. Because again, like I said, if I'm a kid and I see that another quarterback, if I'm a star quarterback, another quarterback goes to that same school and commits, maybe I'm changing my mind.
Yeah, and that could be a possibility, sure. I think the main reason, and I'm not sure, but I think the schools, the reason they wait is, for cases like Byron Coward and Roquan Smith, they announce, and it's like, all right, it's time to fax the letter of intent, and then the fax never comes. So I think they just wait to make sure that they get all their letters of intent, and then they release the information. And usually, it's usually all out there by around noon for the most part, but, some kids do wait later to announce.
Hey, real quick here locally, Boston College, any idea where they ranked in the ACC?
Let's see. Let me, off the top of my head, no. But let me pull up the rankings. I got them right here. Let's see.
And Steve Adazio, a lot of people are excited about what he's bringing to the program, and they had a couple of close ones. They played Florida State tough down the stretch, and
it's tough recruiting against ACC teams.
Again, we're talking about a parade yesterday with the Super Bowl champions and the excitement level of professional sports. Boston College is never in that thought process from a sports standpoint, but maybe the thought process could change if you could turn this program around. I mean, you'd make the joke, Doug Flutie's not playing, no one cares.
Exactly.
What was funny to me, and I'm sure you guys remember this as well, back when Matt Ryan was your quarterback, there was a very brief moment, I think you guys were ranked number 1 in the country. And I was talking to one of my Boston friends, and he said that wasn't even on, the front page, like the fans were like, what are the Red Sox doing? What are the Celtics doing? So it's going to be hard for them to, get that proper recognition. But pull up the rankings here. Out of 14 ACC teams, we've got them ranked as the 10th strongest recruiting class.
We're number 10.
So there you go. What's that?
We're number 10.
We're bragging about being number 10. Hey, Adam Krohn, thank you so much. Keep up the good work on Rivals.com. We'll talk to you later on down the line.
Okay, thanks, guys.